Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we talk all things Colorado Rockies. Tell your mom, tell your dad, brothers and sisters, nephews, uncles, aunts, nieces, you name them. Please make sure to help share this show. We're continuing to grow this out. We're continuing to talk about the Colorado Rockies and the offseason that they've had, and obviously we'll go into the season. But first, let's start talking about something other than potential free agent signings, right? Because that's been really the topic of the last couple of weeks of who the Rockies could target, different guys that they've picked up on minor league contracts. Instead, let's talk about the guy who's really made it all happen, Paul DePodesta. And DePodesta, he's new to the Rockies, right? They hired him just this year. He was with the Cleveland Browns. He's obviously known for the Moneyball A's and everything like that. And I will say we've talked about it on previous shows, but I really felt like it was important to talk about today. He's really been a huge bright spot for the Colorado Rockies. And and what we mean by that is he has started to build out what could be a really, really bright future for the Rockies. He's made a lot of hires that I just don't know if other Rocky front offices would have done in the past, right? You go after Josh Burns of the Dodgers. You get two other assistant GMs from the Mets. Alan Leichman, the new pitching coach, is obviously an outside-the-box hire, and just some of the different ideas that they've had. And I think that's been one of the biggest and most refreshing things with this front office is it just is different. Analytically speaking, it is a huge improvement, something that they really haven't relied on in the history of the organization. And now they have a bunch of guys that should lead to huge improvements in that department. Because the biggest thing and the hardest thing that they have to figure out is how to be successful at Coors Field. No one's really been able to figure it out. You had one blip in the radar in 2007 and 2009. You obviously had a couple of playoff appearances in the 2010s. But other than that, it's been a history of misery and pain and frustration. And for DePodesta, his whole role is to figure that out and flip it on its head. And, it's hard not to feel somewhat excited for how this front office has been built. I think there's still a lot of questions about how do you get the talent here? How do you get the most out of your players? But I think this is a positive step in the right direction. I've been open and honest about how I felt the Rockies have handled some of their free agent prospects and everything like that in terms of who they've gone after and who they haven't gone after. But this is more important right now than signing players in 2026 free agency or 2025-2026 season, I should say. Instead, you're building for a long and bright future, and it starts at these executive levels, something that the Rockies just haven't built properly in years and decades past. So for DePodesta, his hands are full, and he's got a lot on his plate in terms of what he will need to do in order to make this team successful. But the first couple of months, I would say, have been a success. And it's hard because it's all off-season moves. It's all just moves of building out a team. However, it's hard not to feel hopeful with some of the guys that they've brought in. Josh Burns, I think, is important to note just because of his experience working with the Dodgers and the success he's had and has seen. The Rockies need that. They need the different perspectives that they just haven't had inside the organization. So that's obviously an exciting thing and an exciting piece that I felt like it was important to talk about to start off the show. Just because we have focused so much on free agents that haven't gone to the Rockies or haven't gone the way that we would have liked to see, it is important to note that there are things happening that have been positive. And it's important to hold on to those things considering how bad the last couple of seasons have been, right? So that's something to know. And we go from front office and from, some of these exec guys to actually guys that will be on the field. And Charlie Condon is interesting. We've talked about him quite a bit so far on this show. But he is extremely interesting because, the anticipation is, hey, he'll be brought up sometime in 2026. Maybe it's 2027. But, MLB actually put out an article the other day that stated it could be as early as opening day this year. Really out of necessity. The Rockies don't have much in terms of a quality first baseman. There's been talks about signing one in free agency, but another option is that you call up Charlie Condon and you have him start opening day at first base. The guy has a ton of power and a ton of potential. One of the things they noted as well in the article is really one of the big issues for Condon is maybe just keeping up with the breaking ball. But for high velocity pitches, he's actually had success with that at the AAA level. And if the Rockies don't make a move in free agency, this is a guy that could definitely start. It would depend on spring training, how he looks, right? But I think there is a legitimate conversation to have, right? If you're going to trot out some of these other guys in the infield, why not bring up a guy that will undoubtedly have probably the most power in the lineup, or some of the most power in the lineup behind like Hunter Goodman? So that is an interesting proposition because it definitely moves up that timeline, but it could also make sense, and it could go into Paul DePodesta's plan of kind of giving everything a chance, right? They're kind of viewing this, hey, ground level. We're just going to start building this thing and figure out what fits and what doesn't. And Charlie Condon starting on opening day could be one of those things that is a move that could be very beneficial for the Colorado Rockies. I don't hate it. I would prefer to sign a free agent first baseman. We talked about Rhys Hoskins in the last show, but I think it would just be beneficial to maybe give him a little bit more time. That's not to say he's not on the opening day roster, but I do think he might need just a little bit more time. But again, it could be something where they sign a first baseman on a 1-year deal, but they also have Condon on the opening day roster. He is a guy with a ton of power, and the Rockies lacked that last season. So that would be an interesting move. Obviously, we can now talk about free agency. Luis Arraez, he continues to be on the radar and just somewhat mentioned in the Rockies circle. He would be someone that could play first, second, or third for the Rockies. And I think if the Rockies do make a signing, a utility infielder would be a really solid fit. They've talked about Willie Castro, or we've heard about Willie Castro. Arraez would be another nice player to have, though, just as an everyday starter that you can put anywhere in the infield that desperately needs it defensively. Those are two signings that you could see the Rockies make, as well as maybe any sort of utility guy, right? It's why we've seen now a couple minor league contracts for infielders. That is a clear focus for the Rockies right now. There just hasn't been any signings at the major league level, and this could be one for Colorado. I think it would be a home run signing if the Rockies were able to make it happen. Again, though, it seems like if there is a contract dealt or handed out, it's not going to be something long term. Just with where the Rockies are at and the different messaging we've heard from this front office, they're just figuring everything out. They're figuring out this lineup. And so it would just be hard to imagine something long-term. It would feel nice to have a little bit more stability, but I just don't see that happening right now until we get better messaging of what that vision looks like for who they're focusing on free agency and why they're focusing on these players. But we can start to piece it together based on who they've signed and who they've been rumored to target, with infield obviously being a key focus. I think we'd all like to see pitching as a focus as well, but as we've noted, starting pitching is just going to be really hard to get through free agency. I don't think a lot of guys want to come to Colorado where you're going to see a spike in ERA and some things start to dip for them. So it makes sense that, hey, we're going to pick up players where we can. And that could be that focus could change for the remainder of this free agency. It could change in a year or two from now. But right now, it's these middle infielders or utility players that can play multiple positions in the infield because of the great inexperience that the Rockies currently have. But that being said, we're talking about, don't want to hand out these big contracts. We don't want to have anything long term. Let's keep it simple. Let's just get guys on minor league deals, right? Nothing too crazy. But what if the Rockies just decide to sign someone who had a bunch of power in their bat, like Eugenio Suarez, right? That would be awesome to see for Colorado, because third base is a big hole. Power in the lineup is a big hole. And getting someone who has a ton of pop in their bat would be awesome to have. Suarez would be a ton of fun for the Rockies to go after. Again, I don't see it happening, but it is, again, a constant talking point of if the Rockies can get some stability from a veteran player that you know is just going to mash at Coors Field, there has to at least be a phone call. And we've talked about players who make more sense. Someone like Suarez might not make as much sense just because, he was this close to making a World Series appearance. Feels like his focus is probably going to be re-signing with the Mariners or with someone that has a chance to make a deep postseason run. But if the Rockies go deep enough into their pocket, who's to say? And I don't even know if Suarez would be worth it for Colorado just because he is a little bit older. But again, it just goes back to stability. It goes back to having a veteran leader, and just goes back to having someone that might actually sell you some tickets. Because right now, how the roster looks, there's not a lot of guys that sell tickets. And one of my biggest pet peeves, it's obviously good for the Rockies because it leads to ticket sales, but Coors Field is definitely a social atmosphere and much less of a game atmosphere, if that makes sense. That's not to say there aren't diehard Rockies fans that are going to watch every single pitch, but with obviously the rooftop and tickets being fairly inexpensive, you're also getting a lot of people that are just there for a social gathering, and how can you blame them? You got a beautiful sunset, a beautiful park, and baseball games have a really fun buzz in the air, but it would just be nice to have guys that can bring fans in that are excited to watch baseball. And right now, the Rockies aren't bringing a lot of people in that are excited to watch baseball, unless they're opposing fans. And I don't think any of us want Dodgers, Giants, Yankees fans. I mentioned the Yankees. The Yankees barely play at Coors Field. But Giants and Dodgers fans just taking up Coors Field whenever they come to town. I think that makes us all sick. And by providing quality product on the field, it starts to lead to more Rockies fans coming in. Obviously, next season, if you sign Suarez, the team's probably only going to win 50 or 60 games anyways. But you get the point. You just bring in some exciting talent that would just be nice to have for the Rockies. Do I see them going after someone like Suarez? No, I don't. I really just don't see that in the cards. But I think it is fun and at least to look at and talk about. And if it's not this free agency, they will have to make some type of big signing, I think, in 26 or 27, or when Holiday's ready to be called up, 2028. But it's hard to talk about 2028 when you've lost 100 games 3 seasons in a row. You're probably on track to win 100 games again this year. You just got 10th in the lottery because you couldn't have a top pick. It just, I just want that light in the tunnel with just players that you can look at and say, man, they would be a great Colorado Rocky. I'm glad they're on the Colorado Rockies. We've got a couple players. The Rockies have a couple players. But it would be nice to have a few more. And I think that's something that we can all agree on. It'd be nice to have some players that help me get up in the morning. Players that, get me excited to get out of bed. But regardless, Suarez would be sick. The power would be awesome at Coors Field. It might mess with his swing when he goes on the road like it does a lot of other guys, but who cares? He would hit like 40 home runs alone at Coors Field. Regardless, I'm ranting. This has been another Rockies Daily. I appreciate you for listening. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. We're obviously going to be taking Christmas off, but I will see you very soon. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.